Hello all. We'll look into module 3 basics quickly. There is not a proper, what to say, a presentation. So I'll just switch between two of the available PPTs I have. One of the PPTs in accordance with the textbook. That is our textbook is this one, which I've already mailed to you. And based on this, there is a actually minimum number of contents. So I have included another PPT for better understanding with examples. So we'll look into each one of them slowly. Okay. So moving on, basically we are dealing with what is genetic algorithm in module 3. And I can see that the concept of genetic algorithm basically comes with the emergence of Darwin's contribution, that is, origin of species and the survival of the fittest. So basically, we can see that genetic algorithms is a population-based probabilistic search algorithm, and moreover, it is better, you can say it's an optimization technique. So if you have any kind of optimization problems, the best option will be using a genetic algorithm to solve it. So basically, the principles of genetic algorithm is, like I said before, it has a fundamental of basic two biological processes. That is, what is the natural evolution, or you can say natural selection, that was introduced by Charles Darwin, and the basic concepts of genetics. So genetic algorithm was introduced by Professor John Holland from University of Michigan, and it is basically based on Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest, that is the natural selection procedure, where it tries to maximize a function. You're going to learn what is it is known as a fitness function. So it's trying to maximize this function so that we can decide which one has to. Like when you say the survival of the fittest, which is the fittest one depends on the maximization function. So we can actually solve all kinds of optimization problems, maximization, minimization problems, you can say, but more specifically maximization problem using genetic algorithm. Now, most of the time, if we may be getting minimization problem, so what we can do is we can convert this minimization to problem by corresponding maximization problem with the help of some methods like this. So we can say convert this a problem that you have in hand to a maximization problem by using some principles like this. Now let us look at what is the principle of natural evolution and then natural selection. So you can say that basically organisms fighting against each other, that is against the nature, you can say. So to see that who will be more likely to survive, that is determining who is the fittest. So when you say fittest, maybe depending on the type of organism, maybe the strongest, fastest, biggest, or whatever it is. So eventually, after a long period of time, you can see that a lot of population uh, will have some changes. The entire population, as the time period goes, will have some changes, and due to these changes, some of them will become the maybe the best one, and some of them may die out. So the fittest individuals will have survived over time, but the unfit one, those who had some problems, will die out eventually. According to Darwin, this driving force behind evolution is a phenomenon that he called as natural selection. So you can say a natural selection can be summarized as follow. That is written here. Many all the organisms they display some variations uh, in all aspects of their behavior as well as their biological concepts. And these variations are hereditary. That means you pass it from the ancestors to the descendants. And these hereditary variations, or we can, in our terms, we may call it as mutations or something like that. They may have a positive effect or a negative effect on the survival as well as the further reproduction of the organism where he lives in. So depending on the environment where the organism lives in, you can say that the variations may be positive for him or for it or for and maybe a negative for it. So principle of natural selection, you can say, continuation with what are the basic concepts behind this. You can say that those individuals that display the variations that are most favorable in their environment will live longer. So those who are able to adapt to this environment will be able to live longer, and the other descendants who are not able to will die out. So after many generations, these favorable variables will be found in all the individuals in the population because they leave more descendants who possess these variations. Now their descendants also will may have conditions that are favorable for these variations. So this keeps on going. So basically, these are some of the important premises of natural selection or evolution. The information passes on from one parent to the offspring or the next generation, that is known as heredity. Then there will be a different characteristics in a next generation every time. This even though heredity is there, so that is known as diversity. And then there's some process known as selection, where only a small percentage of the offsprings produced will survive till adulthood, others will die. Then there will be a ranking based system where only the best ones will be survive based on the characteristics they inherited. So these are the basic, you can say, features that are there in a natural selection. An example of where a principle of natural selection happens is, why does giraffe have long necks? So, so you can imagine that in earlier, maybe millions of years ago, when giraffes were existent, you can say they maybe did not have their long necks. So they we uh, as an example given here, they did not get their longness by stretching them to reach the leaves on the trees. Instead, what happens is, within the giraffe population, some of the giraffe or the individual underwent some variations that slightly maybe gave them longer necks than them. So you can say it was a kind of problem that happened in the giraffe population where some of them got slightly longer necks. So what happens is, when they had this advantage, those giraffes that had long necks could obtain more food. That is, when you have a shortage of food or something like that on the ground level or something, then they could stretch their necks and reach up to the trees, the leaves of the trees, so that they could obtain more food than the others, those who have shorter necks. So what happened is, they remained in better health, and the descendants they reproduced will also inherit the feature that they also have a slightly longer neck. So you can say, if food became scarce and some of the giraffe had to reach to the highest branch to eat food so that they can survive, then the giraffe with the shorter necks would die off, and you can see that the entire habitat of giraffe were eventually that were left behind will had longer necks. So as a result, you can say that the evolved giraffe population has longer necks. So basically, the principle of natural selection can be indicated with this flowchart you see here. That is, you have initial population of animal. They all struggle for the existence, or that is to get the survival of the fittest. And when the surviving individuals reproduce and they propagate some favorable characteristics, such that the descendants get the better features as well as maybe some mutated features also, and finally they are called as the evolved species. So, but in this process, you can see here there is always a it this takes a number of years. So depending on how many iterations, you can see the struggle for existence and the surviving on the next generation, it keeps on repeating. And finally, every time you get a set of evolved species. This is a general concept of principle of natural selection. Now, when uh, we look at the graph, I'll just look at this particular one also. This, according to a textbook, I've created a PPT. So you can see that natural selection is basically, say, another example is given here. Polar bears adapted to Arctic conditions. They have white fur and body fat. So they have adapted in such a way because you can say that in order to, because there's a lot of what to say, cold condition there. and they are able to store, they have a lot of body fats so that they can keep themselves what do you say, warm. And in order to avoid predators to blend with the snow, they may have white fur also. We can see these adaptable traits are then passed on to the offspring. So that is the basic idea. And we'll move on to how a genetic algorithm works. So we'll move to the other PPT and I'll explain more. Okay. Now, on accounts of genetics, you can see that the offspring generated from the fittest individual of a population are not exactly like the parent. That is true. Because every time we can see that there is some evolution happening. And why does this evolution happen? Because of some process known as crossover, mutation, etc. So there are many, so these are the basic, you say, GA operators. GA means genetic algorithm operators, because which helps in creating a different set of population than the original one. Now, before moving on to the basic, we should know what is meant by chromosome, because in genetic algorithm, it's a very important term, a feature known as chromosome. So we know in general, chromosome is a set of what do you say, a set of genes joined together. It's a long, complicated thread of DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. And you can see it consists of blocks of DNA called genes. You'll have many blocks of DNA called genes, and each gene of a person, you can say, it encodes a particular trait. So you have a nucleus and a cell, and inside this you have multiple chromosomes. And you can say around 23 pairs or 4 to 6 chromosomes within a human cell, we can say, where each chromosome will have a block of DNAs called genes. Now, these are the basics of what a DNA composes of: A, C, T, and G. Now, these are the alphabetical notations of those chemicals. And whenever there is a change in the DNA, it's either caused by, like I said before, crossover or mutation. So this, these, what are the string of alphabets that you see, A, C, T, G, will have a change whenever a crossover or mutation happens. So this is a basic example of how a human crossover takes place or a mutation takes place. Like you have a parent paternal chromosome as well as from the mother's side maternal chromosome. And during crossover, you can see how the changes occur. You can see the change in color in the last figure. Now, mutations. So other than crossover, we also have mutations. So mutations is basically a change in the DNA sequence. So it can occur because of some DNA copying errors made during the cell division, maybe some exposure to the radiation, exposure to some chemicals, or maybe some infection by viruses. So most of the time it may cause a problem. Mutations may cause a problem, but sometimes it may be favorable also, like we saw in the giraffe. So a parent cell may have a base sequence of A, C, G, C, T, but in the offspring, maybe it changes to this, so maybe it is harmful. So this way we can see the mutations can, when you say, incur many changes in the organism, like appearance, how it behaves, how it functions, etc. So basically, the basic framework of a GA that I showed you before, based on evolution, natural principle of natural evolution, you can see here we start from an initial population, and then we are determining the number of iterations. So we try to converge to a solution, right? So if it is not yet converged, then we do basically a selection operation as well as a reproduction operation, where you can see this is repeatedly being done so that till we reach a convergence stage, and once we converge, we stop the algorithm. This is the overall summary of what a genetic algorithm does. Now we'll look into detail of this. So we can see the working goes on like this. It's an iterative process like you see here, and it's a searching technique. So it will keep on working until a certain convergence is satisfied. So if an optimal solution is may or may not be satisfied by a genetic algorithm, but at least we try to find out a near optimum solution. And we can say that the quality of this solution that we obtained just now must be better than some of the better working algorithms that we are, or traditional working algorithms that we already know. So we saw that in convergence, there are two operations taking place, basically selection and maybe the reproduction. So in convergence, when we say selection, we basically first, after creating an initial population, we may have to evaluate what is the fitness of the population. And once we find the fitness, we select the best among them. So that is a reduced set of population, you can say. So we select the best among them and perform mating. And during after the meeting, you can say that we'll have some operations that takes place that makes the changes in the individuals like crossover, mutation, inversion. We'll not be learning this in our module. We have only crossover, selection, crossover, and mutation are the three operators we'll be learning. And we keep on doing this until it converges to a near optimum solution. Otherwise, this keeps on happening every time. Okay. So now, these are some of the things when you're given a problem for solving a genetic algorithm, you may have to find out what are the decision variables or the input parameters. Based on that, what should be the objective function, whether it's maximization or minimization, and what are the conditions of this maximization. Now, once you determine all that, we need to have some algorithm or a mathematical formula for finding out what is the fitness function of that particular input. So for that, and once you have that, maybe you have to represent it in the computer in some way. So we'll be using some encoding like binary or real valued or maybe tree-like structure. So different encoding schemes are used, and we also need to decode it to get back the answer. So what are the different GA operators? These are basically some of the terms we just saw now, like encoding, convergence, mating pool. We need to create to create the next solution, we need to have a subset of individuals where this mating will take place. Then we have to find out what are the individual fitness of this one, and what is the how to make it because every time a population is there, unless there is some change, the next time you cannot keep on repeating the same thing. So you need a diversity to be involved in it. So that is where crossover and mutation, so that we can have and explore other better solutions. And there's also one more, that is inversion. I said we'll not be looking into. So there are actually many genetic algorithm strategies, but we don't have to go into this for now. We will be looking at a simple genetic algorithm, that is SGE. And this is how basically the figure that I showed you before, it's expansion of the same thing. We actually create a start with the initial size population N. Then we evaluate each of the individual. We see whether they meet the criteria. If so, then we return the individual that has the best fitness value and stop the algorithm. Otherwise, we select some number of individuals, say NP, and we create a mating pool randomly so that we can create a number of offsprings from these parents, set of NP pairs of parents. Then we perform crossover, mutation, if needed, inversion, etc. So we do these operations. So this is the selection operation and this is the reproduction operation. So that is how we saw the graph here. So remember this graph, the selection operation and mutation, selection and reproduction operation. So we are just going into detail. So both the graphs are the same. That one is a more concise version. This is expanded. Now finally, once you get the new offsprings, we replace all the individuals in the last generation with the new offsprings created. And we again come back to this process and evaluate them. Again, see if it meets the convergence criteria or not. We select another NP set, create a mating again, and perform the diversity patterns here. And then we keep on doing this again and again. So this is how a simple genetic algorithm works. Okay. Now moving on to the graph that is shown in our textbook. We'll just look into that. So this is the basic procedure and the graph given in our textbook. So there are many features associated with uh, the genetic algorithm, like I said before. The chromosomes. The chromosomes are what are we are trying to encode, and the procedures to encode this chromosome, then to find a corresponding solution. Fitness function to evaluate each of the chromosome or the solution. What is the population size? What is the initial population? What is the mating pool where a set of chromosomes will be selected so that we can create a new generation? Then we have the GA operators like selection, crossover, and mutation. Then maybe we have other parameters like finding out the probability, population size, mutation probability, etc. Some termination condition. So basically, this is we take the initial population, we call it, this is algorithm, the basic step of algorithms involves, call it as a current population. We repeat step 3 to 5 till some termination condition is satisfied. And we apply the selection operation on the current population so that we get a mating pool. So the first step is basically, you can see here, a selection operation, and then you have a, let's see here, we have a selection operation here, and then we have a reproduction operation here. And then we replace the current population with the new population that we obtained after selection and after crossover and mutation, we get a new population. So we replace this current population with the new population by going back to in a looped manner. And then finally we do all this until it converges. So until we repeat step 3 to 5 until the termination condition is satisfied. So finally, and when we return from step 5, the best solution will be the given for the current population. So the same thing, the graph, the only difference is a little change from textbook to textbook. It's the same thing. Initialize the population, perform the job with decoded versions of the string, compute the fitness value, whether it reached the termination value, then we reproduce to create, select the strings to create a new mating pool, create a new population by crossover and mutation, go back, encode it, the new set of population, do the same thing again. Once it converges, we return the best solution. So I hope this is clear. Okay. So this was what we learned chromosomes. So we need all the solutions. So chromosomes are what we are trying to group together to form a solution. So maybe a set of strings. So it can be a binary string, it can be real numbers or any sign or any sort of other encoding can be applied to this. Now, fitness function also we'll look into that in detail. Basically, fitness function, if we have a particular set of solution with the help of a chromosome, we need to find out whether it is the best one. So how can we identify somebody is the best? Maybe we have many factors to understand. So we need some algorithm or formula which helps you to understand which is the best one. So higher the fitness value, the better the solution. So say if you have a what do you say traveling salesman problem, maybe the you can say the sum of all the tour that he takes, maybe the sum of all the length of the path may be the fitness value. So depending on what we need, whether it's a maximization or a minimization. If you want the shortest path, you can say the minimum path, the sum of the path which gives you the minimum value may be the best fit values and so on. So if you want a maximization problem, then you can take the maximum values and so on. Population, we already know what is a population. It's a set of chromosomes that forms a population. Initial population always we randomly generate because we do not know initially who all are there. So whenever a problem is given to you also, you can have an initial population that is randomly generated. Now, depending on the size of the population, naturally the search space as well as the computation time will vary. So this is how you create a new population with the help of a old one. Select a current population, do a selection process. It's the same thing that we saw in the flowchart, mating pool of chromosomes, perform a crossover or mutation, and then you get a new population, and we go back and keep on doing this process again and again to generate a new population from our old population. Now, what are the different GA operators our textbook or our syllabus is looking into is basically selection, crossover, and mutation. So you pick a chromosome for reproduction that is into the mating pool, and that is known as selection process. Crossover, you combine or swap the traits of the parent so that you get a different offspring. Mutation is to bring more diversity by altering the chromosomes. Okay, so this is the basic idea. Now moving back, we'll see each kind of. We'll also see what is more in the textbook that is given here. This all we discuss now. What is natural evolution, chromosomes, what is natural selection, then crossover mutation, what is generic algorithm in general, This is the algorithm and this is the flowchart we just saw now. Okay. And what are the requirements of a chromosome and so on. So you can see here an example is given here like this, where we'll just go through it. Consider a tiny instance of a traveling salesman problem with 5 cities in 12.4, figure 12.4. For the sake of simplicity and brevity, the number of cities have been kept low. Moreover, the number of cities under consideration is fully connected. So all the cities are connected to each other so that we have different combinations of cities whenever a tour is set by a salesperson. So suppose it is not connected, then you can add some extra edge and assign infinite cost to these additional links. So say this is an example. The instance of a traveling salesman problem and the weight that is given on each of the edges is the distance between those two cities. So if you are posing it, this is a minimization problem you can see here. So how did they convert a minimization problem into a maximization problem is by rewarding it in some way. So you can say if the person, you can see the maximum distance between this in this graph is between A and C, that is 50, maybe 50 meter or kilometer. So what they did is the shorter the traveling salesman travels, so what you reward that person by subtracting it from the maximum cost. Okay. So suppose that 2 is the shortest one, see between C and D. So the maximum cost of this entire graph is 50. So 50 minus 2, the reward that he will get is 40. So the shorter the tour, the maximum the reward he will get. So what we have done is we changed the minimization problem to a maximization problem. Now we can look at this graph 12.5 for further processing. Okay, so the altered graph shows you links. The weights that are shown here are basically the rewards instead of the cost. Now, what is our aim? Our aim is not to find the shortest path in the traveling salesman problem. Our aim is to find the tour with the maximum reward. So, which tour should, how should the traveling salesman person travel so that he gets the maximum reward? So, this is how we converted a minimization problem to a maximization problem. Now you can see the cities A, B, C, D. You can say the permutations of these letters will give you the tour. So you can write it in this format like C, arrow D, arrow B, means that this is the order in which he travels. So if he's traveling in the order C, D, B, A, E, it will look something like this: C, D, B, A, E. So you can take the sum of all the rewards here. Okay. Now then we can encode them also. So you can see the table that is shown in figure below. You can see it contains a binary code for each of the nodes. So we'll look into details of how to binary code and real code. And for the importance in the syllabus, I think only binary code is given as an examples and all. The code there are actually 5 nodes, right? So to represent 5 nodes, we need at least 3 bits. Okay. So because there are 5 nodes, the value 5 can be with that is from 3 bits means 2 raised to 3. You can have 8 different values, of which 5 are only needed. So mm, the remaining codes will be unused. 8 minus 5, that is 3 of them will be unused. So to represent a binary chromosome, you can have something like this. Say, for example, if you want to represent, this is the table they have shown, A, B, C, D, E. They've taken the first 5. So you can see 0, 0, 0. You have all the 3-bit codes from 0 to 8, 0 to 7 actually. So 8 bits are there. So 8 entries are there of 3-bit each. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, etc., etc., 1, 1, 1. And we take the first 5 of them and the remaining 3 are unused. So this is the encoding scheme used. Okay. Now, if you want to represent the tower, that is C, D, B, A, E, if this is what you want to represent, then you can C is 0, 1, 0. We just write the chromosome, the binary value of the corresponding letter there. Then we have to write D. So it is 0, 1, 1. We write it here. Then it is B 0, 0, 1. Then it is A 0, 0, 0. E is 1, 0, 0. So this is the entire chromosome you can see here, depending on the tour that he takes. Now, if you want to calculate the reward, you just have to sum the values between these parts. Okay. So C and D, C and D is, you can look at the graph, it is having a reward of 42. Then D and B is 45. Then B and A is the next part. So B and A is 43. And finally, A and D, that is A and D. A and D is 46. And finally, you have to come back to this particular thing. So E and C in a circular manner, you can see it will be 48. So the total reward of this two will be 224, sum of all the rewards. So this is how you can find for each of the two that you take. How do you binary encode it and create a chromosome with this encodings? And then how do you convert the reward, or maybe the reward is basically maybe the fitness function. So this way we can find out. Okay. Now this is how encoding and decoding is done as an example. Okay. Now, there may be issues like it may be unused. You have a set of binary values and you need to find the tau. So what happens is, suppose that you're given a chromosome like this 101011001, etc. So when we look at 101 and you look at the encoding schemes given here, 101 is actually an unused set of binary codes, and we don't have a proper label to it. So similarly, you can see the fourth pattern 110. The 110 is also unused one, but it is not used. And you can see 001 is occurring two times in the third and the fifth positions. But we cannot, according to the traveling salesman program, we cannot visit a particular vertex twice. That is the basic idea. So such cases can be actually resolved by marking these nodes in a circular way. That is, once you select a node as marked and as visited, then you mark it. And suppose we come across a code with is not assigned, then what we do is we take the next available code from the list of nodes that are given in the first half. You can see the used ones. And if there is a conflict also, we select for one of them and we move on to the next available one. Say 101 is not used. So the first available one we say, suppose we took A. Okay, so we mark it as A, simply as A. Then we have 011. 011 is already D in the encoding scheme. So then we mark 011 as D. Then we have 001. 001 is already marked as B. So we put ADB. Okay. Then we have 110. So 110 is not there, it's an unused one. And A we have already visited, so we have marked it. B is also taken, but C is not taken. So next we add C because the exact code is not there, so we take the next available one. Then we have 001. 001 was B, but it was already taken before, right? And we have taken already A, B, C, D. Now what is remaining? We have only E remaining. So we put E. So we can actually change to the next available set of nodes if we have some problem in the chromosome so that we get some tool like this. Okay. And this decoding option is given in this algorithm. Okay. That is, if it is not already visited, we select it as visited. Otherwise, we take the next available node in the list of nodes. And this keeps on going for each of them. Now, moving on to a fitness function. We see an example for a fitness function in the same traveling salesman. So let us consider the same example, the TSP instance given in the previous figure. That is simply the fitness function that for this particular example they're given is simply the sum of rewards associated with the weights in the tool. So suppose that you have a chromosome given as 101, 011, 001, etc. And it represents the tour A, D, B, C, E. So what we do is the fitness of that particular, that is F of CHR, the fitness of the chromosome is given by the weight of A to D, the link between A to D, plus the weight of D to B, plus the weight of B to C, etc., etc. So that is nothing but you can look at the graph and get the weights there from for this particular tour, and you can just sum of make a sum of it and find the last after E. The E is the last variable, right, or the last node. After E, you have to circularly move back to A and take that also, and you get 222 as the answer. On the other hand, another path, if you take A, B, C, D, E, then the answer is 193. So of course, we can see that 222 is much more better than 193 because in the sense of reward, the reward should be maximized. So the first solution is better than the first tour is better than the second one. Okay, so that is the basic idea. Okay, now when looking at this population, the term population, we need to have a group of chromosomes. We have a group of chromosomes that forms the initial population. The size of the population is a very important parameter because depending on that only you have to determine the number of iterations or how long or how large the search space is. We are going to find out based on the size of the population. So there are many factors fixed by the designers of the genetic algorithm, so they should be aware of this. Now, suppose that we want to create a small population for TSP. Okay, so the suppose assume that the size of the population is 10, and you can see in the figure 12.8, it represents a procedure for generating the initial population. And table 12.1 will show you the population of 10 chromosomes that we created according to the tools and the fitness value. So for every iteration from, we can say 1 to 10, we are going to generate one of the chromosome. For J is equal to 1 to 15, it is a two-dimensional array like this. You can say CHR of IJ. We just create a random bit between 0 and 1. Any random bit 0 and 1. So you can see 15 is the length of this and there are 10 chromosomes here. This is the initially generated random population. So they generate some random bits 0 and 1 like this. And based on that, the two nodes are determined, and based on that, the fitness values are also determined. So this is how you create the initial population, say for example in a traveling salesman problem. So for 10 times, we'll be having a length of 15 like this. So we generate either 0 or 1. So you have it. So for 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, we go and see the table. You can see 0, 1, 1 is already there as D. So we write D here. Then 1, 0, 1. 1, 0, 1 is unused. So we take the next available node, say for example, E, and so on. So this way, we just move on and create some different unique tools like this, different permutations of the nodes A, B, C, D, E, and the sum of the values will be taken as the fitness values. Now, among all these, we can see that 224, that is row number 9, gives you the highest, what do you say, fitness value. Okay. So next we can look into the other PPTs to see if we can learn any more details. Okay, now we'll look at the different GA operators. So before looking at GA operators, the selection, we have already seen selection crossover mutation. So for doing this, once you have a set of initial population, we need to do some encoding schemes, right? So there are many, so the examples that you saw now were binary encoding, or simply binary GA, we call it binary coded GA or simply binary GA. There are also other methods like real values also can be used, or we can have an ordered kind of encoding or a tree like structure encoding and so on. So we'll be looking at just what is binary basically for sake of different operations that are given in our textbook, and then we have we'll just see what is the real coded and so on. So I'll just scroll through. So binary encoding, you can see if you have optimization problem with n inputs, that means we have basically these inputs act as the gene. So these genes, when you define a set of n genes like this as the input parameters, we call it as a genotype. Okay. And these genes will have some corresponding values. So that like you saw 1010 or A, B, C, Ds and etc. Or the chemical names of the genes in the actual human A, C, T, G. So those are that actually known as the phenotypes. Okay. So these entire phenotypes is what is termed in the population as a chromosome, the collection of genes. Okay, when it comes to binary encoding, you will have a string of binary bits, that is zeros and ones. Say this is first chromosome and this is the second chromosome, etc. So maybe these X1, X2, X3, X4 are the genotypes. So that's the combination of groups. So there are maybe 4 genes where each one is represented by binary values like this. An example of a knapsack problem is a maximization problem. You must be knowing what is a knapsack problem, where you can say a thief, if he wants to what is it, steal in a house, and he has got a backpack or a knapsack which has a maximum weight of maybe 50 kg, and he found many valuable objects inside the house, but he has to decide which of the objects he should pick so that he can fill his knapsack but not exceeding the maximum weight. That's what the criteria given is the weight of the knapsack. So beyond that, he cannot take. So each object has a particular weight and a value. Say you have an object, say 10 I1, I2 is 20, and I3 has a weight of 30. Okay, these are the weights given it. And the value of the object that has a weight 10 is $60. For 20, it is $100. For 30, it is 120. So naturally, he will prefer taking 30 and a 20 maybe, or should he take a 60 and a 30, sorry, 10 and a 30, etc. So you can have different combinations, right? But maximum that he can accommodate in the knapsack or the backpack is only 50 kilograms. So you can have select the items. So you select either 10 or 20 or 30, or you can have a combination of 10 and 20, 10 and 30, 20 and 30, or you can have the combination of all the three if it satisfies the criteria. So if these are the different options he has, you can actually convert this into these n entries into a binary problem. Like if he's selecting, there are 3 items here, right? So he can give, if he selects one item, he can assign a 1 to it. If he does not select, you can give a 0 to it. So it will move something like this. So if he's selecting one of them, say he's selecting a 10. So 10 is having the initial position, 20 is at the second position, and 30 is at the third position. And it can be represented by 3 bits. If he's selecting 10, then you can put a 1 here. Okay. Instead, if he's selecting a 20, then instead of 0, he can put it as 1. See, like this. If he's selecting a 10, then this position will be set. If he's selecting a 20, this position will be set. If it's a 30, it is this. If it is 10 and 20, then these 2 bits will be set. If it's 10 and 30, then the first and the last bit. If it is 20 and 30, then it will be these 2 bits, and so on. And if it is all the 3, it will be a 1, 1, 1. So this way, you can convert any sort of problem to a binary encoding scheme like this. Okay. There are also other methods given like this. So you can see here there is only one variable, that is a x. So x is the genotype here. You can decide that the condition given here is x should have values only between 0 and 15, not more than that. So you should take care that the value should be uh, so if it is, so 4 bits are enough actually, but they have taken 5 for some reason. So for using 4 bits, you can have values between 0 and 15. So if they're taken 5 bits also, so just take care the value does not exceed 15. That is one way of representing it. Another example here, there are 2 variables. So there are 2 things to represent, that is x as well as y. And they've shown that the value should not exceed 10. So you can again have 4 bits for representing this, but still, or maybe you can take 4 to 5 bits and represent these value x and y. All the values for x should be between 1 and 10, and for y should be between -10 and 10. So there are some limitations of binary. You need to convert it, and there are some other issues also, like Hamming distance should be found out, and the accuracy depends on the binary representation. If you don't do it properly, maybe a proper output will not come, like you saw in the traveling salesman, and so on. Okay. And there are also real valued coded GAs. It's optimization, useful for optimization techniques in where you have continuous search space. So there is no need for any intermediate encoding and decoding steps. So maybe you can have direct real value representations like this. Okay. Then it's also possible that you can have binary encoded forms of individuals. Uh, sometimes give faster result than these decimal values. Okay, so what they can do is you can decide on the number of bits and you can convert it using something like this. So if you have a real value thing, how do you convert it to a binary? As an example, we can see, I'll just skip this. So if you have, say, a binary, a real value, say from 5 to 30. So if you have 5 to 30, you decide on the number of bits that is required to represent different values from 5 to 30. And you can use formulas like this. Like the number of bits n is calculated by taking the highest value, a upper bound and lower bound of the given value by epsilon, where epsilon is a parameter to decide what should be the partitions between 5 and 30. So you can do something like this. So 30 is the highest value, 5 is the lowest value, and epsilon is also given. So we decided that n should be only 3 bits. So if there are 3 bits, then you have 2 raised to 3, that is 8 possible solutions. So how the 8 possible solutions are given, after between 5 and 30, how do you get the values? You can do it like this. Okay. Now the next value can be found out by x is equal to 5 plus epsilon into 1. And the next one can be 5 plus epsilon into 2 and so on. So this way, multiplying, we can get different values for each of the binary string. So just have an overview of what is real value encoding binary forms. Okay, this is another example with 4 bits. And order encoding, I'm just skipping it. Free encoding is another method. Okay. Population initialization, we have already looked in the previous the textbook and in the other slide. So we can have an initial population in some method that we can find out. This is the example of the initial population, binary population. So for 10 chromosomes, if you need 15, you had a length of 15. This is how we found out using the algorithm. Now, moving on to the GA operators, the main part. Okay, the GA operators will be looking at selection operator, crossover, and mutation.